Good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Lisa Huckins from the Office of Federal Programs, and with me on my team this morning, I have Daphne Reese, Karen Auble, Chantel Carter, and Diane Neal. Thank you for joining us this morning for our Planning Tool question and answer session. This session will be recorded. We do have a large group this morning, so please turn off your video and mute your microphones. This morning we're going to be reviewing some basic information about navigating the CCIP and working in the planning tool. Then we'll be answering your questions. There are multiple resources available, including webinars and step-by-step guides to help you with the needs assessment and planning tool. We're going to show you where to find those resources, so hopefully you won't have to take a lot of notes during this session. You can just refer back to those resources. Then we're going to navigate to the planning tool and review the two different needs assessment options and the minor changes to the planning tool. Finally, we'll respond to the questions that were submitted prior to this session and answer any additional questions that you have this morning. If at any time you think you need a break, feel free to step away. Restrooms are down the hall, snacks are in the kitchen. I'm going to start by showing you how to find the resources that are going to help, because I think that's probably the most important tool you're going to need. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Hopefully everyone can see my screen now. The first tool that I want to share is the address book. So if you are in the CCIP and in your plan, the address book is accessed from the left menu here. And the address book is going to have some invaluable information, which is the name of your consultant. So if you scroll down under Consolidated Application, your ODE application contact, this is actually Columbus, is Diane Neal for this district. And so you can click on that contact, and it's going to give the phone number and address for that person so that you can easily connect with them. If you're coming to this training and you are a brand new person in your role working with the CCIP, or if you just haven't been on the system much and you need some really in-depth training, definitely call your consultant or email your consultant, and they can walk you through this in a more basic level. Today we know we've got some people who've been doing this for years and some people who are pretty new, so we're going to try to kind of find a cruising altitude that's that middle ground. So if you need some additional direct one-on-one assistance, that consultant is the person to talk to. Some other people you can find in here, your grants management contact is listed for your district. That's the person who's going to help you if you have questions with your PCRs and FERs and all that good stuff. So there's lots of connections you can get through this address book tool. And we're also now going to go into CCIP and look at our document library resources. From the left menu, if you click on Document Library and wait for the computer, you're going to find the CCIP link here. If you hit the plus, of course, the first item is your CCIP notes. So if you think, hey, didn't they send me something with some information about something? It's probably going to be there. The other tool that you're going to use for planning specifically is this FY21 Planning Tools and Resources. The first thing you're going to need to do to use these tools is decide, and today's probably a real good day to do that if you haven't yet, whether you want to complete the CCIP needs assessment like you've been doing in the past, or whether your district's going to do the new one needs assessment this year. If you're not in the pilot, it is optional. You can choose one or the other. If you open the option for the needs assessment that you've selected, there's a rubric that's going to show you what goes into a quality plan. The school labels flowchart that's going to help you know which needs assessments you have to do and which components you have to link to that plan. An FAQ, a glossary, That's going to have some examples of what goes into a SMART goal and what do we mean by action steps and some of these terms that we throw around. It has a tool for creating the plan with the CCIP needs assessment, and then there's a webinar. And you're going to see basically the same resources again for the one needs assessment. So for people who are interested in doing the one needs assessment, those tools are there. If you just click that plus, it'll drop those down. So you want to make sure you're in the right set of tools for the type of needs assessment that you're doing. The other thing that you can use as a tool is going to be the Ed Steps information. So if you go to ODE's website, just education.ohio.gov, and use the search button to go to Ed Steps, this first link will take you to the Ed Steps page. It's got information about the pilot and then the 3-year planning cycle. And then it's also going to have information about the cohorts, who's assigned to which cohort, the dates and deadlines for each of the different cohorts. So this can be a useful resource also outside of the CCIP, and that's just from ODE's website. Just search Ed Steps for that information.
Hey, Lisa.
Yes?
This is Daphne. Would you try to maybe share your screen one more time, because it looks like it got frozen on the contacts page for everyone.
Uh-oh. Hang on, let me try this.
So it looks like you're still sharing it, but maybe there was some sort of issue with the lag and it keeping up. So maybe if you just try to re-share it again, it'll pop up to the current screen you're on.
And this is Karen. Some people are having a hard time seeing Lisa's screen. They're just seeing the presenters. If you go to the top menu bar, there's a little icon that looks like a person with a left-hand arrow pointing at it. If you select the drop-down and select speaker view, that should show you Lisa's screen. So try that and let us know in the chat box if you're still having difficulty. But it looks like Lisa's rebooting right now.
Okay, I reshared. Can you see me? Can you see yourselves, actually? Let me minimize this. Are you in the, can you see the CCIP tools now?
Yes, thank you, Lisa.
Okay, let me just show that again real quickly. We just went from Document Library, clicked on CCIP, and then FY21 Planning Tool Resources. And then here's where you decide if you're doing the CCIP needs assessment, you want to use this group of resources. If you're using the new one needs assessment, then you want to use this group of resources. And then the Ed Steps page is in the ODE website. You just use this search button up at the top, put in Ed Steps, and it'll bring you right to that page. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the planning tool. The first thing you have to do, if you have not already done it, is copy your FY20 plan to FY21. You're going to have to do that prior to completing the needs assessment or sending your needs assessment from the one needs into the planning tool. So we're going to use one of my districts, Indian Lake Local. My friends there nicely agreed to let me use them for an example. We'll get them pulled up. So I searched for Indian Lake. When I come into them, I'm coming into the current year. I'm going to go Planning, Planning Tool, switch my year to 2021. And here is where you're going to click to create the copy. Something else to notice on this page, when you come into your 2021 plan, it's going to list your cohort. So this district is in cohort 1, which means next year will be their first year of their 3-year planning cycle. So you can see that on that page once you come in here. So you're going to create that copy. If you are not a pilot district, your old plan is going to roll forward, and then you'll just need to update and change that old plan to match your needs for this year. So you'll make changes to that. And we're going to pull up another district to show you. Let me use somebody else. There's some minor changes to the one need, or the CCIP needs in this year. Very minor changes, but I want to show you what it looks like just so you're not thrown off if you see something new. Again, we're going into the planning tool. This district has already rolled their plan forward, so we're going to go into their plan and look at the needs assessment. Oops, sorry, I forgot to change my year. So this should look pretty familiar to anyone who did this work last year. The first section is where you're going to identify those who participated in your needs assessment and planning process. Ideally, that should be a broad group of stakeholders. We understand it's probably become a little more challenging to bring your stakeholders in under the current circumstances, but you can still use surveys and other methods to reach out to parents and other groups. The next section is the relevant data points. This is where you're going to indicate the data and the data sources that you used to assess your needs. So that could be attendance data. We had 90% attendance this year. We want to improve that to 95%. Could be your priority need. So you're going to list a variety of sources, behavior data, attendance data, of course, academic report card type data. And obviously we won't have this year's report cards coming out next year. So whatever academic tools you're using to assess your kids, you're going to talk about that data, talk about where the problems are, and then in this priority needs statement, you're going to identify sort of your big rocks. Out of all that data we looked at, where did we determine we had a need? Maybe it's elementary literacy. So you're going to write a needs statement that we need to improve literacy in grades K through 5. The sections below are what we called last year a lot of the time the 8 buckets, which are the improvement areas. And so those are 8 different areas where you may want to make some changes to try and address that priority need. So if you have a literacy goal, under professional capital, you might need to do some staff training. You might need to hire a literacy coach. So those would be things you would put there. Maybe you also have a curriculum need to deal with your literacy issue. You want to bring in some more reading materials, some additional curriculum that aligns better to your assessments, so that might be something you would put here. Fiscal management, maybe you don't have any issues with fiscal management, so you would leave that blank. So again, this should look very similar to last year's, and this is what you're going to do if you do the CCIP needs assessment. Okay, we're now going to take a look at another district that's done the one needs, just so you can see what that looks like. And Elida Local's letting me use them, so thanks, Elida. Maybe. Again, we're going to go into the planning tool and change our year to 2021. They've already submitted their plan. Again, you can see that their cohorts pilot, they're in the pilot group. That's why they're using the one needs and have already submitted a plan at this early point in the year. If we go into their district agency plan, and go into their needs assessment, it's going to start out the same. If you use the one needs system to do your needs assessment this year, you'll still have to fill out your stakeholders section. So you'll still complete this piece, but the rest of the areas will be pulled over from the priority needs that you selected in the one needs. So as you go through the process of assessing your needs and answering the question in one needs, at the end you select priority needs out of those areas, and then it sends it here, just kind of like what used to work with the decision framework. It just sends the information over to this system, and it's got 3 areas that they've identified here. So under the primary improvement area of professional capital, they didn't identify any needs. But under curriculum, instruction, and assessment, they identified needs in English language arts and instruction. And then the next area where they identified a priority need was safe and healthy schools. And underneath that, they've entered their root causes. Now, each of these priority needs come under these primary improvement areas, and you'll see when we move over that they align with the goals and the strategies that they've created. And they chose 3 priority need areas. We recommend that you try to stick to a 3 to 5 kind of a number for your priority needs, because those are going to align to your goals. And trying to manage more than 3 to 5 SMART goals for a district is a lot. If you're a big district, you may need more. If you're a small district, you may not even need to have 3 priority needs, because it may be more than you can reasonably work on in a year's time or even in a 3-year plan. So this is their needs assessment. Again, this text that's here has been pulled over or sent over from the One Needs system. Then you can see in their plan, they have goals in those 3 areas that were identified as their priority needs: English language arts, instruction, and safe and healthy schools. If I click the plus next to the goal, it expands down. And you can see that their strategies are in that area of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And they have 3 different strategies for their English language arts priority need. Goals are written in SMART goal format. We again are asking that you enter a student measure and an adult implementation measure. So this is, what are you going to look at to see if the students are progressing towards this goal, and what are you going to look at in terms of the adults and how they're progressing towards this goal? What are they doing? We're going to do just a little tour of how this plan works for some of you that may be newer to the planning tool. So I'm going to collapse this back down. If you want to see your entire plan, there is an Expand All button. And that's going to open your full plan so you can see your goals, strategies, action steps, funding. It'll break the whole thing out for you. And you can use a Control F on this page if you're looking for something specific in a plan. The pluses next to the goals or any of the parts of the plan We'll open that section so you can view the next subsection, like the strategies under the goals. Or if you click a plus next to the strategy, it's going to drop down your action steps for that strategy. Your action steps should be the who, what, why, where, when pieces. So as you're adding those action steps, it can be this year we're going to accomplish this and next year we're going to accomplish that, or it could be the parts. First we're going to assess different curriculum options, then we're going to select a curriculum, we're going to, next action step is train our staff on that curriculum, and then third action step is evaluate how that curriculum is working for our students. So you can break it down multiple ways, but those should be the detail pieces. The other piece in here is a Fiscal Resources button. If you open that and they haven't entered any yet, this is where you're going to put your estimation of what you're going to spend. If you use these create links, that's going to allow you to enter the funding source you intend to use and the amount for that funding source. These fiscal resources are at the goal level. So if you had that literacy goal that you were working on, you may be using Title II resources to fund the teacher training, Title I resources for implementation. So you may be using multiple funding sources for a single goal, and you would indicate those here. Again, this is just an estimate at this point in the year. Obviously, you don't know exactly how much you're getting in each grant, so you can just estimate based on last year. If you are in the planning tool and you've rolled last year's plan, you're not creating new, then you can use these links to go in and do your edits. So if I wanted to edit this SMART goal, I can come and type in here. Well, I can't, but you could. Excuse me. Couple new things in the planning tool. We have down here a plan review status. This is only going to apply to the pilot folks this year. But these are the different offices that may be reviewing plans for you in the future. Not all of them will. Some of them may not have a need to review your plan. But as they review the plan from different offices, they'll update these statuses. You also have a new planning tool history log. So again, those various offices, as they review the plans, can come here and add history log notes, just like they do in the funding tool or what we do in the funding tool now. Other offices will have access. So in the future, for those of you not in the pilot, that's where they're going to send you notes to let you know what additions they recommend to your plan, or if you're missing something that's critical, they're going to put that information there. The district improvement, school improvement, and school-wide component links are still going to be required if you use the CCIP needs assessment. The school labels flowchart that is in those documents in the document library will help you determine which components you need to complete. Remember that your strategies link to your district components. The action steps are going to link to the building level components. If you use the one needs, the components are built into the assessment, so you don't have to link components anymore. So that is a really nice feature of doing the one needs assessment. I know those components kind of challenge people sometimes. The planning tool is always open for changes, so it should be an ongoing living document. So as you're working through year to year, even once you're in your 3-year plans, you can make those changes. Again, with a year like this year, maybe you decided you needed to move some money into a social emotional program that you hadn't been using in the past. So you can change your plan to say, hey, we found there's a real big need here that we didn't originally address. Let's update the plan and plan to work on that for next year because we know it's going to be an issue. Again, opening up your plan, clicking on these individual links lets you update. You also, of course, can create additional strategies, create additional action steps, and add funding sources as needed through the year. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Daphne, and she's going to start working through some of the questions that we received prior to the training, and then if you have questions, we'll start working through all of those also. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for that introduction. I just want to share out one of the questions that came in the chat that was pertinent to Lisa's planning tool introduction. LaShawn asked if the plan should be rolled over before the needs assessment is completed when you're working for FY21. And yes, we recommend rolling over the plan first and then having it there. That way, as you do the needs assessment, you'll have the plan to edit. So thank you for that question. We did have a couple of questions to share that had come in earlier, so I'll do that first, and then we would love to hear your questions either in the chat or just through audio as well after we discuss these first couple. Okay, so the first one is I have never.
Real quick, Daphne.
Yes, please go ahead.
If anyone has called in, you have to do a *6 if you want to try to open a microphone to ask a question. Just on that off chance somebody who's on the phone wants to try and check in that way. Sorry, Daphne, go ahead.
No, thank you, Lisa. Okay, so the first question is, I have never had any CCIP experience, so I'm hoping to learn how to navigate the system and find out what my new responsibilities will entail. At this point, I feel like I don't know what I don't know, so it's hard to have specific questions. So what we'd recommend if you are very new to CCIP is to reach out to your federal programs consultant. Lisa pointed to where that contact is in within CCIP, but maybe you are still struggling to even follow along and get to the name of that contact. Your district does know who your federal programs consultant is. So whatever person in your district tasked you with working with CCIP, I would reach out to them and say, hey, can I get the contact information for my consultant? That way I can get a little bit of a kind of an overview with them. As a consultant myself, I can tell you a half-hour discussion with that person, kind of showing you where the basics of the planning tool and the funding piece are, will really go a long way to helping you feel much more comfortable navigating our system, because the system is a little bit quirky and not quite intuitive. So that would be our recommendation there. The next question is, how do I know if my buildings need to do anything, such as the decision framework or school improvement components? So there is a district planning piece, and then there are building planning pieces. And if you're wondering, does the building need to do something, the best place to find that information is going to be the school label flow chart. Lisa pointed out how to access the document library, and this is where the most up-to-date school label flow chart will be. You'll go ahead and look for which category you're in, either doing the one needs assessment or the regular planning tool, and then you'll match up your district and the school with what the labels are in order to see what the pieces would be. Okay, so those were our two questions ahead of time, and now I'll turn it over so we can get your questions here live.
Thank you, Daphne. We do have a question from Matt Isle. He wants clarification. If we're doing the new one needs assessment, we should not roll in last year's plan before starting. The one needs assessment will populate our new plan for next year, right?
Do you want me to take that one? It will not. You have to roll your plan forward. It's going to carry over last year's plan, even if you do the one needs assessment. So your needs assessment will look different. Your plan will not. So you'll have to go in and update that to meet your new needs. The only group whose plan will not roll over are those 40 districts that are in the pilot program. They are going to be creating a brand new plan, 3-year plan this year. But for the districts that are not in the pilot, they'll be rolling over last year's plan and updating it for this year. And then when you get to your cohort's first year of their 3-year planning cycle, so next year for the folks in cohort 1, when they go to roll their plan, they still have to do the roll the plan step, but it will not bring over a plan. It'll start a blank plan for them.
And I would like to share quickly for those of you who may be doing this by phone call and not have access to the chat. Diane Neal pointed out that a great resource, especially if you're new and you have that same question I mentioned earlier, who is my contact? What's the easiest way to find out my consultant? You can certainly call our main office line, and that's 614-466-4161. Because when you call that line, then that person will certainly be able to look up that information for you as well. So thanks, Diane, for pointing that out in the chat. And now we'll go ahead and wait for more questions.
Hey, Daphne, it's Diane. I'm interested to know from our participants today, how many of them know which needs assessment they plan on doing for next year, and how many are still trying to decide. And if you know which one you're doing, what helped you make that decision? Or why did you make the decision you did?
Hi, Diane. It looks like we have a few people who would like some suggestions about trying to make that decision. I can see in the chat, Jennifer, Sherry, and Kelly all said, well, there are some suggestions as we're trying to decide which of those would be a good route for us. So what are your thoughts there, Diane?
So here's some things to think about. When your cohort comes up, you are going to be at that point rewriting a complete plan, and it'll be a 3-year plan. And then every 3 years, your plan will be a clean slate. So the needs assessment is the instrument that really helps provide the outline for your plan. And so if you're new and you haven't done the previous needs assessment before in the CCIP, the decision framework is no longer available. I know we had a question on the decision framework up ahead. It's been put to rest. So the only 2 choices for the needs assessment is the one needs assessment and the CCIP needs assessment, which is more of a narrative. So I would recommend, if you're new and you haven't done this, to just go ahead and jump into the one needs assessment. The challenge is going to be getting your buildings to go through their questions first and doing this remotely. So I recommend you have a similar meeting like this with your BLT, and you go through those required questions for the buildings, and then any other areas that they really feel like in the building needs to be a part of their plan. Using those root cause analysis that the buildings do and the areas that they've selected for priorities are going to help you at the district level then when you do the District 1 needs assessment. The district could have required items that they have to answer based on district data, but then you can also look at the buildings information to help you decide at the end what the district's priority needs are going to be, which in essence then become the priority needs for all the buildings in the district, as well as the strategies you select. If you're doing the CCIP needs assessment, you're doing a the needs assessment is a narrative. You have to get all your data to support whatever priority needs or strategies you're using. So you need to support those by data that you have available at the district. And you would use last year's report card information that you just received in January, I believe. And then any other data that you use, such as your universal screeners that you use, or your quarterly assessments or district assessments you use, as well as data for your culture and climate, like discipline, attendance, your health index from your county, any of those things. Here's the clicker. When you go into your plan, how much work will it be for you to get your plan to align with your needs assessment? We currently have plans in our CCIP that have become very long. And often what we saw were districts were not willing to edit their plans because they were afraid of losing component relationships. I think we need to let go of that fear. Edit your plan the way you feel is necessary to address the needs in your district. And if you need to create component relationships, call your consultant and they'll walk you through how to do that. If you're doing the one needs assessment, you can edit to your heart's content, and you don't have to worry about any of those component relationships, because you've already addressed those through the required questions that are in the CCIP. So those are the big items that I would think you would want to think about. If you're in Cohort 1, I would recommend you do the one needs assessment, simply because you're going to have to do it next year for a 3-year plan. And it's probably going to be a good idea to practice that one needs assessment this year. And then, of course, everybody is going to have to do the one needs assessment next year. The CCIP needs assessment will no longer be available. So that might be another thing that you might want to keep in your hat. Where's your district right now? How will should you just go ahead and take the plunge? If you're a 2-year, Cohort 2, you got 2 years. You could write a 2-year plan using the one needs assessment. If you're in Cohort 3, you've got 3 years. You're really going to be, you could write a 3-year plan on your own. It'll be reviewed every year by us, but you could do that. So those are things for you to think about. And I think I talked too long, as usual.
We had a question come in the chat. Who received the email regarding which cohort we are in?
That went out in a CCIP note. So it would have gone through your contacts for your district, your superintendent and your treasurer, as well as whoever is linked as the funding application contact in your funding applications.
We also have another question. Are we required to use priority needs from the one needs assessment if the needs from last year are still relevant?
I would say that why would you have different priority needs is my question. If you've gone through the one needs assessment and you know what your priority needs are, even though when you get to the last page in the one needs assessment, you select the ones that you want to have as your priority needs. So my recommendation is that you use the tree or the outline for the one needs assessment to make sure you answer the questions around those areas that you already have priority needs in, as well as your required questions.
We have another question from the chat. If current one needs is a prototype, will things we put into it carry over to next year, or will it be blank next year?
It'll be blank, simply because you're not in your 3-year. So you really literally will be doing a one needs assessment every year until your cohort comes up. Once your cohort year comes up, then you're doing the one needs assessment and your plan every 3 years. And in between, you're only going in and doing updates when you need to do them in your plan or your needs assessment.
I just wanted to mention, per the earlier question about the cohorts and who got that information, if you did not get that information, it is on your plan if you go to your 21 plan, and then there's also a list on that Ed Steps page. So if you go to the ODE website, search Ed Steps, there's a link to the cohorts list so you can look up your district and see what year which cohort your district is in.
Jody is asking any idea when FY21 allocations will be loaded.
Jody, I'm on the allocations team. This is Karen Auble, and we're anticipating a similar timeline to previous years, that the ESEA allocations will be loaded in mid-June.
Just wanted to add an additional piece of information. I've had some questions from some of my districts about possible flexibilities with the current situation. CCIP Note 434 has information about those waivers and some other flexibilities. So if you want to go through that and look at some of the things, there have been some waivers with Title IV, moving the technology limit, and the category minimums and some other things, Title I carryover waivers. So you definitely want to take a look at those as you're looking for how you can expend money for the rest of the year and what options you have for some money that needs to be moved or couldn't be expended, and trying to think out of the box for how to handle this situation.
We've had a couple more questions pop up. The first one is, will the timeline still require submission by July 1st for a substantially approved date?
This is Karen again, and yes, you should still plan to submit prior to July 1st for that July 1 substantially approved date, so that there isn't any lapse in your ability to draw down your title funds. Diane, did you have anything to add to that?
A follow-up to that question was about anticipating significant changes in allocations. I know you have answered it in the chat, but for those that may be on the phone, maybe we can answer that here.
Yeah, we're not seeing any significant fluctuations. But if there's a situation in your district, if you have a lot of kids attending a community school, or, a unique situation that would impact your allocation, and you want to reach out and get some, preliminary estimates, we can provide that to you. Just give us a couple weeks, but if you want some preliminary numbers, we can probably provide those, if you reach out first week of June.
We have another question about the one needs assessment. So Sherry is asking, we only have to answer the required items, but can choose to answer other items in sections. Is that correct?
Sherry, I'll jump in here. Yes, when you're doing the one needs assessment, there are required items, but the other items still appear so that if they are applicable to your district, even if they're not required, you may answer them and can even make them priority needs if that's what your district finds when doing their root cause analysis.
Bill Lawson has a question about unspent auxiliary funds being carried over, and that is really a question that you would want to direct to your area fiscal coordinator, as our office doesn't support, programmatically support auxiliary questions.
Chantel, would you like to maybe just real quick define those terms for any new people so that they know why he's asking and why that doesn't fit with our office?
Sure. So our office, the Office of Federal Programs, manages those programs under ESSA. And those that require equitable services, Title I, Title IIA, Title III, Title IV, and IDEA does appear in the CCIP consolidated application. We would answer questions about NPDS data entry for IDEA, as well as CCIP application help, but programmatically, the Office of Exceptional Children would answer IDEA questions. All of those programs are federal programs. In Ohio, we do have state level programs. We have administrative costs as well as auxiliary services, and those programs are not handled through the Office of Federal Programs, and it's best to contact your area coordinator. You can see that Lisa has navigated from the ODE homepage. If you type in area coordinator, you'll be directed to this page, and the area coordinators are assigned by region. So their contact information is on there, and they would be the best source for any questions related to auxiliary or state level programs. We had another question come in. We are considering adding strategies that relate specifically to COVID-19 schooling into our CCIP. What are our thoughts on that?
Diane, do you want to address this one?
Okay, so yes, I can address it. You certainly can, especially you know, as you look at your needs for next year. You're certainly wise to think about what could be your needs with the COVID-19. Also, remember that you do have an additional funding application that will be coming through here within the next week, we hope. And that would be specific to the COVID-19. And those needs there, the guidance, I believe, went out for that on Friday for the ESSER grant, which I can't remember what the acronym even stands for. I don't know if anyone else can or not, but it's the Educational Sustainability Relief Fund. I don't remember what the other S is. But anyway, those funds are definitely also available to assist you with the COVID-19 issues that you have, as well as to reimburse some of the costs that you've had for this year due to COVID-19. We encourage Thanks, Daphne. We encourage the schools to really think about, as they're moving forward through this year and the COVID-19, and anytime something like this may happen, that they really think about how can they provide instruction in the future for a similar situation, or if in the fall we end up not being able to open up our schools as we've had before. So it would make sense that some of your funds would address that, and it could be on the academic side as well as your school climate and culture side, which would get into your mental health and social emotional learning needs, your wellness and health needs. Title IV covers some of that as well. So yes. Lisa, I wanted to point out to an earlier question while we still have everyone here about if we have different priority needs and those required items that come up, how do we address that so that they are our priority needs for our plan? Could you go to the CCIP 1 needs assessment in the FY21 plan and show them again the chart that has the outline for the 1 needs assessment? It would be helpful then if you have specific priority needs that you know your district needs to address. This outline will help you find which document or which questions in the 1 needs assessment you'll want to go to. It outlines each of the subsections, and underneath those subsections, the different priorities. So if you go to the 1 needs assessment, and if you go to the document that's titled Improvement Areas and Priority Needs Structure, and open that up.
Hang on a minute, Diane. I'm not sure where you're going, actually into the 1 needs system or onto
No, the planning tool resources, FY21.
FY21
and
1
those
needs.
districts that are doing the CCIP 1 needs assessment.
Okay.
And
then
it's the document that's titled Improvement Areas
and Priority Needs Structure.
Yes, there you go.
Got it.
So let's say that you know your district, even though attendance didn't come up because you don't meet the criteria for chronic attendance, it's an area of concern for your district. You can go, this document can help you figure out which areas then or sections you want to go into the 1 needs assessment and answer those questions. So if you then would go to the section for school climate and supports, and then you would go to those questions that are for attendance only, or D in that area, attendance, and simply answer those questions around attendance, then to pull the attendance over as a priority need for the last page.
Thank you, Diane. We have another question about the plan. When writing our goals, if state testing is not being used next year, are we okay moving forward for using non-traditional ways to measure success?
So currently, right now, we would be using whatever our most recent report card data is, and then other district data to support. If we get no state results at all next year, this year's report card then would be your data that you would use for 2 years, and as well as more current data that you have in your district for your needs assessment. So it's similar to what we had to do a few years ago when they had switched the report cards over and the assessment system. We had to use report card data for a couple of years. I do encourage you, though, to use more current data along with your report card data.
I want to throw out a reminder to anyone who is fairly new to this or just wants a refresher on the planning tool. There are webinars in both of these areas for those using the One Needs and those using the CCIP planning tool. It's a voiceover with a PowerPoint. It's going to show you screens. It's going to give suggestions. It's going to have examples of a SMART goal, a strategy, an action step to follow. So those can be really helpful too, as a way to just kind of look through the process and either, again, refresh your understanding of the planning tool, or if you're new, learn more about it.
Maggie has a question about CCIP notes. So she's been getting emails forwarded from the current CCIP coordinator, but they are not being sent specifically to her. How does she get on the distribution list? My superintendent has given me that role in OEDS. When I sent an email to my consultant, it came back blocked.
Maggie, what district are you in? Lisa, can you go and do a search for LeBray?
Yep, I'm going to pull that up.
See if there's a couple of places that it may need to be changed in the CCIP.
Yep, I will pull that up a second. Also, Maggie, you can go into the CCIP and access all of those notes directly. That doesn't help with knowing that they're out there, but there is a link here so you can see the past CCIP notes. But let me go pull up your district a second.
Also, Maggie, I would check with your IT department to see why your email was blocked. Was it blocked on our end, or was it blocked on your end? Because it could be whatever. So who do you use as your provider for your email service? Gmail. So let me send something. I'll send something to IT to see if there's anything going on with that, and have them check it, because you shouldn't be blocked. And I'll let Scott know too. So Lisa or Karen, do you want to show where it shows here for LeBray? I can't, I'm on your screen.
Margaret is listed as, I was just going to ask her what her full name is, and she says, that's me, Margaret Kowach. She is listed as the planning tool contact.
But not, see, it goes to the funding tool contact, not
Yeah,
the CCIP notes, not the planning tool contact. So let's go and, yeah, we need to change that. You have to do it in a revision. She'll have to go to the funding applications and the sections. And then down at the bottom of the page, there is a contact link. So you need to go in there and you'll want to change that and then tell how many years you've done the CCIP there, so that you'll be receiving those CCIP notes as well as your treasurer and superintendent. Can you go back to the funding applications again, Lisa? And then go to the, go to the address book again. And then scroll down. Anywhere else that, for all of the other grants down at the bottom, can you scroll? We see that, I don't know if your district gets any other like competitive grants, but you would change those here. You would have to go to each of those applications then and change it. For example, if you get the literacy grant, you'll want to make sure that you're listed as a contact for that one, or a McKinney-Vento. Okay.
Maggie, your consultant is Scott May, so you could get in touch with him. He's here on this address book also if you need some help finding all of this and working through the steps. I'm sure he'd be happy to help you work through this process to get everything set up so that you're getting all the contacts for all of the different grants.
So I think at this point we'll take a final call for questions, either through the chat or if anyone would like to chime in.
I would like to say that I am so glad to see that so many of you were willing to take the plunge and do the one needs assessment this year. And some of your comments, we truly appreciate those comments there in the chat.
Yes, exactly, Diane. Thank you all for not only joining us, but sharing your comments. And please know that if this all kind of, got you a little bit into the mindset of thinking about what to do within CCIP and you have questions later, there will be additional regional training sessions that you are welcome to join as well. That'll be a similar format with the Q&A. There will also be live lab sessions for the funding application side. This was the planning side. That will also come, I believe, in June. And so please feel free to reach out for any of those opportunities. And as always, reach out to your federal programs consultant because they are going to be the person who is kind of your first go-to. We will end the recording soon, but thank you all very much and have a great week.